was 2 years ago on a Communion Sunday. We changed things up a little bit. We tend to do things kind of the same, pretty much. That Sunday, we changed the bread that we were serving, which is kind of a big deal, because usually we use these soft, round loaves that are really easy to tear a chunk off of, and everybody walks up and you get a piece of bread and dip it in the cup, and it's all very smooth, and everyone does fine. Well, that Sunday we got a hold of some grainy, crusty, chewy bread. And I knew immediately, when I almost pulled a muscle trying to tear the loaf apart, that this was going to change the dynamic of the whole thing on Sunday morning. The servers standing up there, they were working up a sweat, tearing these chunks of bread off and giving them to people. And there were people who were still chewing their bread in the pew when they stood up to sing the last hymn. That's how long it took. One guy, when I walked by him as we were serving people in their pews, he reached out and stopped me and he said, "You know, I think Otis would have had a hard time chewing that chunk you gave me." And immediately I had the image in my mind of Otis, the rescue dog, and this guy doing sort of a tug of war, chewing, having that piece of bread, trying to tear it apart. And it cracked me up. I almost didn't get through the rest of the service myself because that image kept coming to mind. Now, how inappropriate is that? Right? Or how appropriate is it? Isn't there something exactly right about a chunk of the bread of life, a chunk of the body of Christ that is broken off and given to you, and you have to really work at it to ingest it, to take it in, to internalize it? Isn't that just right? Well, this text I have been chewing on all week. And I'm still chewing. It's a tough one. John's Jesus says, "I am the bread of life. Those who come to me will not be hungry. Those who believe in me will not be thirsty." Thirsty. What's that got to do with bread of life? Well, what John is doing here is what John is often doing, what the Gospels often do, hooking back into earlier stories. Thirst. What do you think? What happens when you think about thirst? Thirst. The Hebrews in the wilderness were thirsty. This is a recapitulation in a way of the Exodus story, coming back, reminding them, yes, we were thirsty in the wilderness and God provided water for us. Jesus is saying, you won't ever be thirsty again. Hunger and bread that will satisfy your hunger for it. You'll never be hungry again. It's a wonderful metaphor. And it begins with that saying, I am the bread of life. I am is the name of God. It's the name that God gives Moses when God sends Moses to bring the people out of Egypt. Who shall I say sent me? God says, tell him I am sent you. Tell him that existence, that the ground of being, that all creation sends you. I am. Okay, so that works. It's rich and alive and gives you something to chew on. Well, then the arguing begins. Or the murmuring. Murmuring. Where does that come from? Go back to the Exodus story. The Hebrew people have water and they have food, but it's not the water and the food that they want, and they're complaining. You know how that goes. There's the story of the two women in the restaurant complaining. The food in this restaurant is terrible, one says, and the other says, yeah, and the portions are so small. Complaining, it's never quite right. Yeah, murmuring in the wilderness. And what is the murmuring about? What do they say? They say, how can this man claim to have come down from heaven? We know him. He's one of us. We know his family. This can't be right. The issue is, well, there's nothing special here amongst us. There's certainly nothing godly here, is there? But if we go a little bit deeper, maybe what John is getting us to think about is, can God be local? Heaven forbid. There's a song, what if God was one of us? just a slob like one of us, just a stranger on the bus trying to make his way home. Well, that can't be, can it? God has to be from way out there somewhere else, comes to visit, just looks in, because if God is here with us, if this earth is God's home, well, then we got to behave differently. We got to treat the earth differently than we're treating it. Do we not? Well, Jesus is always up for discussion, an argument, and when they start complaining about him, he pushes back. He pushes the metaphor. He says the manna in the wilderness that was provided to your ancestors didn't do the trick, and you can't keep going back and claiming that status because of something that happened back there. It's about what's happening here now. That's why I'm here. Your ancestors ate the manna and they died. I'm here so that you might have life and have abundant life. This is the true bread from heaven. And after all the things that he says in explaining this and about raising up what God has given him, then he says, and the bread that I will give for the life of the whole world is my flesh. Gulp, right? And if that doesn't put his adversaries, the people he's arguing with, the Judean authorities, back on their heels, a few verses later he says, well, you actually have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. Oh, okay. So we push the pause button right there. How do we compute that? Well, obviously this is Eucharistic language. And it's reflective of both the practice and the debate going on in John's community and in other communities about what does it mean when we gather at the table and eat this bread and drink this wine as Jesus said we are to do? What are we doing? And the discussion continues on to this day. And there are different beliefs, even to the point of the doctrine of transubstantiation, which says that the bread becomes flesh and the wine becomes blood somehow. We don't go there. But that's part of the discussion. They're debating that, and they're also arguing with others in the larger Jewish family about who this Jesus is and what it means for him to give his life to and for us, or the life of God to and for us. It's sort of meant to tweak the noses of the opposition. It's sort of a, oh yeah, well take that, in a more elegant sort of way, in a troubling sort of way. But what really troubled me this week is not John and not the talk about eating flesh and drinking blood. Been there before. It's reading contemporary progressive biblical scholars who write as though this is exactly what happened and this is what Jesus said. These are not the words of Jesus, these are words about Jesus. This is early church metaphorical hyperbole. It's raising the ante. As the debate goes on as to whether Jesus is Messiah and in John is Jesus God, the ante is raised and John is saying, either you're in or you're out with this Jesus. And you better be in because he's the real deal and this is the real thing. It's a parable about Jesus. Jesus as the food that God gives to the world, as the bread that God breaks open and serves up to the world. But he's tough. As you chew on him, he will chew on you. And some of the stuff that he serves up to you is really hard to swallow. For instance, last Sunday evening, Julie and I went for an anniversary supper, and Julie had a wonderful time. She's here, so I have to be kind of careful. We had fun. It was a nice time. I had a good time, too. On our way home, we're driving, we live up north of here a little ways, driving east on Rockford Road, County Road 9, 42nd Avenue North, going west, heading towards Winnetka, where we would cut north, just a few blocks. We're driving along. It's Sunday night. It's busy for a Sunday. There's lots of traffic, and so we're just kind of staying in the right lane. Our turn is coming up. We come up to an intersection. there's a light there, and it's green, but we stop. The lead car at the corner has stopped, and there's like 5 cars. We're like the 5th car back, and there's cars behind us and cars alongside of us coming by. The light is green, but we're not going through. The lead car has stopped, and the passenger side door is open. And there's a woman who's gotten out of the car, and she's very gingerly. She does not move well or fast. She's moving over towards the curb, and she gets over, and she bends down, and she picks something up off the street. I think, oh, wonderful. This is the New Hope scavenger hunt on Sunday night on County Road 9. Perfect. And it's a busy night, and it's an intersection, and the light is green, and she picks up whatever the treasure is, and she makes her way slowly back to the car and gets in on the passenger side and closes the door, and as she sits down, the light turns yellow and then red. So we sit. And you know, those lights are eternal, right? We all know it takes forever. It's not even a minute. And I keep trying to remind myself of that. So we sit a half minute, 45 seconds, whatever, and it turns green. Go! It's a green light. Let's go. Come on, let's go. You know what I mean? And they go. The lead car goes, and the next car, and we all go. Yay, we're free and we're moving. And then a half block later, we stop dead again. And the lead car, the passenger side door opens again. The scavenger hunt is on. There's more treasure she has found. And the cars going beside us are whipping past, and they don't dare pull over because they get smashed into. So we stop, and she gets out of the car. The door opens, she gets out of the car, and she walks over towards the curb again. And, oh, man. And I'm just, steam coming out. And it's not like we have to get home. We're not on a schedule. It's no big deal. But she walks to the curb, and then she gets up onto the curb and walks towards the sidewalk. And the car's still there. The door's open. Engine's running. And then I see that there is someone in a motorized wheelchair on the sidewalk over here. It's a black woman in a motorized wheelchair. And the woman getting out of the car is white. And she goes to her, and they're talking. I can't hear what they're saying, but they're talking. And then the woman from the car hands the woman in the chair an object. What do you suppose it is? It's her phone. The woman in the wheelchair dropped her phone as she crossed at the last intersection and didn't realize it. And probably wouldn't realize it until she got home or into the store where she's going or whatever. By then, somebody, probably multiple cars, would have run over that phone and it would have been smushed. But the woman in the car saw it, they stopped, they retrieved it, and they took it and gave it back to her. And then there's this jerk back here who is ranting and raving about, why are you wasting these green lights? Take that, Hansen. Chew on that, right? And I did. And I have been chewing on it all week as it has been chewing on me. On my impatience, on my self-importance, on my selfishness, on my obnoxiousness, on my judginess, on my meanness. All of that stuff that's there is being worked on. And it's tough stuff. It's been there a long time, and I've worked on to develop it, so it takes some breaking down. But it's going on. I am the bread of life. God is the bread of life, right? I am as God. God is the bread of life, John's Jesus says. Those who come to me won't go hungry. And those who believe in me, those who live into me, live into my way, will not be thirsty, because I will provide you all kinds of nourishment, all kinds of food for you to chew on, to bite into, to process. I will give you an infinite number of experiences where you can reflect on your own life and your own behavior and your own attitude and your own being and see, how are you doing? Have you come any distance at all between that last stoplight and this middle of the block? Have you changed at all? I will feed you my own life. I will break my life open for you again and again in other people, in experiences, in tastes, in sights, in sounds, in seasons, in moments of rest and in troubled moments, I will offer you my very being over and over again, because all of this is mine, and I will lose none of it, and I offer it to you to feed you and fill you and stretch you and grow you and trouble you and challenge you and make you whole and make you new and make you like Christ. Actually, to make you Christ. All of it I offer to you for that very purpose. Even this right now. Even this. Amen.